Hi, Ron, and welcome to Raising Vibrations with myself, Simon. Today, guys, I'm going to be completing the Pluto series with Pluto in the 12th house. I finally actually got through this whole series. It's been a long time since I actually began it. I didn't actually realize that it was going to take this long, but nevertheless, it has. But here we are at the end, and a culminating experience nonetheless, exactly how that Pluto in the 12th house works. Okay, so basically, before we go ahead, again, like I've done with all the other videos, in order to understand the totality of this, description or understanding Pluto in itself, you need to go and watch the introduction, okay? And through that introduction, I actually explain a lot about how Pluto enacts itself and what is the nest, how does it function within the birth chart, and etc. etc. Okay, so watch that one first, and then check out the Pluto in the 12th house, right? So, what are we looking at here when we're talking about Pluto in the 12th? Okay, Pluto in the 12th is a very difficult placement to have, to be honest, in my opinion, especially in the world that we live in today. And I mean, just in general, to be honest. Because when the soul comes in with Pluto in the 12th house, we're looking at the dynamics of a culmination. In other words, the totality of an ending of a cycle that began with Pluto in Aries, okay? And this soul has come through and has lived the totality of all the 11 other archetypes, experienced the totality of everything relative to that cycle that it intended to have. And now it's at the final process, so the final, archetype in consciousness, where you need to let go completely. You need to now throw off all the ego identities that you have had prior to this existence, okay? And you basically culminate your whole entire cycle. And that's intense. That's intense because Pluto in the 12th house is exactly that. It's like coming into this lifetime with the pre-orientation of having so many dynamics attached to you. For number one, you're completely and utterly sensitive to everything because it's a Piscean archetype. You're 360-degree wide open and sensitive to everything, okay, on an unconscious level. So your emotional security patterns are completely and utterly linked to letting go of everything relative, okay, so letting go of everything in terms of all ego identities that have been in the past, and then through that process to completely and utterly feel your way through life, okay, using this sensitivity. And that's like literally saying, okay, like now you don't have any identity whatsoever, like you can't identify with anything, and now you've got to go about your life as if you've just opened the door and the lights are off and you've got to walk into the darkness, into the abyss. That's what Pluto in the 11th in the 12th house actually manifests in terms of our consciousness when people have that. So it's an ultimate surrender process, and you have to surrender to what? You have to surrender to creation. You have to surrender to the nature of God, okay? The nature of us, the nature of what it is. And that means something higher than yourself. You have to let go of all pre-existing perceptions and pre-orientations to what you want life to be, and you surrender to what it is that source is asking you to do. In other words, what you are being divinely guided to actually do. And your process of getting in tune with that experience is intense because there's three types of dynamics that will then play out with this Pluto in the 12th house, okay, relative to what I've just explained right now. The surrender to everything and to allow complete and utter source energy to flow through you. And whatever life circumstances you have are completely and utterly irrelevant to your journey, okay? Whereas like somebody like Pluto in the 10th house, like myself, for instance, or Pluto in the 3rd, will be going through those archetypes. We'll be learning to separate those desires and understand them and work through them, etc., etc. Whereas Pluto in the 12th, they don't have any. You are now completely and utterly connected to source in the way that it is now you are guiding, or you are basically expressing it through you. You're a vehicle for this experience, and all of it that happens in your life will be functioning and necessitating that process. So you've got this dynamic where the soul will feel unconsciously that because it can't identify with itself, because this is something that you'll definitely feel, like you can't recognize yourself, or you can't identify yourself because there's no ego. So you basically have this dynamic where the soul gets utterly afraid of stepping into the abyss. In other words, looking in front of itself, knowing that there is absolutely nothing in front of it that it is desiring in that sense. So therefore it must just be accepting of the reality and going forward relative to what you are being divinely guided to do. So what are your interests, etc. So you get this experience, you feel that there's this abyss in front of you, you freak out, and you take a step back and you filter in, okay, past life experiences and realities, and you attach yourself to that. And you get lost in the matrix of the illusion, this Pisces archetype, of escaping your reality to the point where you completely and utterly lose touch with reality and you're in this abyss. And then what will happen is that in order for this to be rectified, life will come along and say, oh, buddy, this is not actually how this is supposed to go. And you'll get this melting away of this reality. It'll be removed away. You'll get disillusioned. And through that disillusion, you kind of get knocked back and you have to find a spiritual essence within yourself. And then you go, okay, yeah, like, all right, I understand what's going on. You deepen your connection to God consciousness, as it were. So you constantly keep on attaching yourself to past experiences that give you a sense of security. And as you keep on attaching yourself, they start to dissolve. And so you find yourself doing something and then it no longer facilitates your needs anymore. It no longer gives you a sense of, whatever. It just falls away. That reality just falls away. It dissipates. And then you're left disillusioned in that experience. And then what happens is that you can then look forward, right? So now if the soul looks back and it recognizes that it wants to fixate on something that it's known, but then gets disillusioned, so it comes back to reality again, looks forward again, and then observes that it's super scary, but knows that what it did previously, in other words, going back, wasn't good either. So it gets stuck in the stasis where you don't actually manifest anything. You don't actually do anything because you're too afraid to go forward and you're too afraid to go backwards. And so you get stuck in the middle, just like observing. And constantly that experience will happen as well, where you'll just won't manifest anything whatsoever. The trick here, the polarity here, when it comes to the Pluto in the 12th house, is to actually do the thing that you're most scared of, which is to literally do the bungee jump, to like jump into the abyss and trust completely that whatever it is that's going to be coming your way, whatever experiences that are going to be manifesting in your life, whatever it is that you're going to be going through, are completely and utterly in line with the soul's journey in itself. It's what it is functioning, what it's necessitating, which in itself is extremely scary. So it's like standing on the edge of a mountain, knowing nothing of the front and just like free falling in and just going at the flow, because that's the Pisces archetype, to let go completely, to let go of everything and to just, reflect and trust. So the polarity here is the sixth house. It's the Virgo archetype, where you do what is essentially called karma yoga, where you're constantly in the space where you are doing service to God. You are in a sense coming through, and your work here is to acknowledge your sense of spiritualness and to be of service to others in a spiritual way, to recognize the other dimensions that exist and to bring through, to channel through, to allow that information to be brought through. And whatever your path will be exactly your service, Virgo, the polarity point. Okay? So to get in tune with that and to allow yourself to actually be in that process of constantly being of service to others in a way that is allowing them to have spiritual empowerment in that sense. So you're connecting to those other dimensions and allowing them to be then part of you. Now, one of the interesting things that relates to this archetype as well, and that I highly recommend every single one of you guys that have Pluto in the 11th house, or in the 12th house, is that you align yourself with a belief system. You orientate yourself to a belief system that gives you the understanding of how the universe works, like to advise yourself to get in touch with a transcendental belief system, to acknowledge the higher dimensions, to be able to connect to that and to orientate yourself around that, to learn what it means to surrender to something that's higher than yourself and to teach others. Because it's only by understanding it through those lenses will everything make sense to you, because the experience is intense. It's a Neptunian experience. It's like being completely lost at sea, and the only way that you can actually find your way through the illusions of what is real and what isn't real is by is firstly discerning your reality. That's a big thing. And secondly, being able to actually live in the moment, which is that service. and to not escape, because escapism is intensely it's a very big part of this experience, to be completely and utterly open and vulnerable, but so connected to higher self, and to escape the reality, this one, the physical reality. So again, with the transcendental belief system, is to align yourself with that, because when you are going along your path, there will be life circumstances that will take place which will shock you into situations that will force you into an alignment with a belief system that's higher than yourself, because you're having to go so deep within. You're having to surrender to something that is so much more powerful than the ego consciousness, in other words, the physical body. So that's what Pluto in the 12th house is about, guys. Any of you guys that do have it, I am jealous because of what awesome capacity you have, but at the same time, I'm like, definitely find that belief system that allows you to understand the nature of how creation works, because without that, you're just going to be lost at sea. Fantastic, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed this interpretation. There are more dynamics associated with Pluto in the 12th house. Of course, if you want to know more, come to my site, simonforster.com, and book a reading with myself. Check out the school that I've also created, and my subscription service. Everything is on my website at simonforster.com as well. And come read some of the articles that I've written as well. Okay, fantastic, guys. Hit the like and subscribe button. And until then, take care.